When I first heard someone suggest prompt engineering would be the next big job, I cringed. Prompts felt too slippery to be something someone could really engineer. So I built this Firefox add-on to help my students do some real engineering with reusable, interconnected prompt templates. I'm David Colarusso. I co-direct Suffolk University Law School's Legal Innovation and Technology Lab. And today, I'm going to show you how to get what you need to start prompt engineering in under 10 minutes. First, you're going to need the Firefox browser. Once you have that, you're going to want to add the lit prompts extension. You can do that by going to the add-ons page and searching for Suffolk lit prompts. And there you'll find the extension. Looks like this. You want to go ahead and add it to Firefox. It'll ask for some permissions. And then there will be the extension right there in your browser. It comes preloaded with a bunch of prompt templates. You, of course, can get rid of all these, make your own. But let's just see what happens here if I start to try and use these. The first one here said, actually is going to suggest that what I should do is open up the templates and settings page using this templates and settings button. So I'm going to do that. And then here you'll see a page that explains all the things you'll need to know to use the extension. In fact, it also then shows you the text of the prompts and all the parameters you can set when you're writing your own prompts. But up at the top here, it's going to have this part where it's asking you to choose an API that you're going to interact with. So the extension works as a wrapper that allows you to create templatized prompts, interconnect them to each other, and then send them to an API service provider that's running a large language model. Of course, you can use OpenAI, but you can also use any OpenAI compatible API. So for example, you might want to try LLM Studio, which is this project that allows you to download LLMs and run them locally, which would mean you could use the extension entirely internal to your own computer. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to use the OpenAI API. And to do that, we're going to go ahead, we're just going to use the API base here for OpenAI, and we're going to need an API key. Well, to do that, what that means is you need to have an OpenAI account. When you set up an account, you get a free amount of API credits. If you created your account a while back, those may have expired, in which case you might have to buy some. But if you're going to use OpenAI, you just log in. You choose the API section of their offerings. And here in the left menu, you're going to choose API keys. You'll then have the option to create a new key. I'm going to call this test. And it's probably going to ask to make sure that I'm a person. I got to point this in the same direction here. And then once I've proven I'm a person, it's going to give me an AI key. Don't worry, I'll delete this after this session here, so no one's going to steal that from me. And I'm just going to paste that in here in my API key. And now actually the extension is all ready to go. So now I can start going to web pages and doing things. So here I am over at Project Gutenberg on the story The Monkey's Paw. And I actually come over here and use one of my favorite prompts, which is summarize and question this page. And so I click on that, and what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and make a summary of the contents of that web page, and then it'll let me interact with it. So here's a summary of the story. And I can say, I remember The Monkey's Paw, having read it many years ago. Wait, who is it at the door? Right? And it's going to go ahead and it's going to look at the text of the story, and it's going to tell me about this. And it gives me a little rundown on what's happened in that story. So that was me interacting with a web page. I can do other things, not just to interact with the entirety of a web page. Here's a social media account I follow on Mastodon. I can't read it, though, because I only read English. So how can I translate this? It seems to be something about some piece of technology going on. How do I figure out what's going to happen? Now, of course, some Mastodon servers have translation built in. This one does not. So I'm still left not knowing what they're saying. So I'm just going to highlight the text. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say translate and reply in original language. And this is a prompt I set up that will not only translate the text, so their motherboard broke, but also allows me to type something. And then have that translated back into the original language. Now, of course, the really exciting part about lit prompts is that you can write your own. And so let's find a place where things break and see if we can fix it. So here's the Minecraft Wikipedia page. And if I try to do the summarize and question this page, well, it turns out this page is really long because people love Minecraft. and it's actually too long for the model I used. So I actually can go back to my templates and settings page, and I can find that API call, or that prompt. And here's the summarizing question. And what I can see is it's taking the text of the web page, and it's asking me to summarize it. And what I can do actually is I can see here the model is using a 3.5 turbo, and that's not going to be, it doesn't have a big enough context window for this. So I actually have a list of the OpenAI models here. And I'm going to go ahead and actually just choose this newest one here because it has a context window of 128,000 tokens. That's a lot. So even though it's a really big web page, if I choose that as my model, I should be able to go over to the Wikipedia page and run the summarize and question on that. So this might take a little while. This model is a newer model. It's bigger, and so it's slower. So let's give it a minute to deal with the page. But when this finishes up, it should do the same thing we saw before with the monkey's paw, which is that it will summarize the page. And then more than that, we'll actually be able to interact with it. So here's a summary of the page, and I can ask all sorts of questions like it, like who is Herobrine? If I want to, I can correct my capitalization, I suppose, but who is Herobrine? And I can ask it that question, and hopefully it'll give me an answer that makes sense. For those of you who don't know Minecraft, or don't know the culture around Minecraft, Herobrine is actually a piece of sort of urban myth around Minecraft. Here we go. It tells me a little bit about it, enough to tell me that it's a bit of folklore and not really talked about here in this page. So the fun part, of course, is that you can come and you can write your own prompts. You can edit the ones that are here. There are comments, there's documentation, but it's about exploring and having fun and playing with these tools, and then also starting to see where they fall down. And so you can develop a better intuition about how your prompts are going to perform and how these models are going to perform against each other or in certain circumstances. So I hope you enjoy. Good luck writing your own templates, and have fun.